Welcome to the Good, the Bad, and the Sequel Q&A. My name's Doug. So the next sequel that we're going to be reviewing will be our 73rd sequel, arbitrary number, but it'll be our 200th episode. So what's better for 200? Two of the biggest horror icons. I don't think there's anyone else that comes close in my eyes. And of course, I'm talking Freddy versus Jason. And this week, I can't believe I was lucky enough to interview Jason Voorhees himself, almost Jason and Jason Takes Manhattan. Actor, stuntman, stunt coordinator, stunt driver. He does it all. Ken Kirzinger. Ken was so much fun to talk to because I think with a lot of these guys, gentle giant. He grew up in Vancouver. When he got into the stunt industry, it's when that Vancouver filming boom started to happen. When American companies were like, hey, we can go to Canada and our dollar stretch a lot more. So you got to hear how much passion he had at such a young age for this. And he had some great acting roles over the years, like we talked about right in the beginning. I remember him from Ace Ventura: When Nature Calls and from Hot Rod. And one thing that was really cool, so before we start the interview, Ken wanted to shout out one of his fans. She wrote a book called Rusty Blade, The Love of a Fan. Her name's Shayna Keebler. He wanted to plug it, so I'm going to put it in the episode notes so you can find the link there. And 200 is coming up next week, so do me a favor, subscribe wherever you're listening, rate us, like us, share us, follow us on all social media at Sequels Only. And without further ado, man, you're going to love the stories during this interview. Ken's great. Without further ado, here is actor, stuntman, gun twirler, stunt driver, and Jason Voorhees, Ken Kirzinger. We are here, man. This is going to be cool. I haven't really talked to anybody that did like stunts per se, and I know you had the acting side too.
Yeah.
So it'd be cool to hear like that end of the business. I've talked to people like I chatted with Alex Winter. We did like a Death Wish 3 reunion with him, Kirk Taylor, and Tony Spiridakis. And they talked about their stunts that they did, like falling out of a window and rolling down. And I'm sure what you did was a little more intense. But before we get there, I always like finding out about journeys and how people got into this crazy business. So what part you grew up in Canada? What part was it?
I grew up in Victoria, actually, on Vancouver Island. I don't know if you know where that is, but Vancouver Island is just off the west coast. And Victoria is the most southern tip. And it was a great place to grow up. There was absolutely no film industry there or anything while I was growing up. But later in life, when I was in my late teen, let me go back. When I was about 10 or 11, I read an article about a very famous stunt guy named Hal Needham. And that kind of tweaked my interest in stunt work and working in the business and stuff like that. And it was years later, somebody came to Victoria to film Last Desperado, I think it was, a Western. And they had turned one of the old streets in Victoria into a film set. And, I was walking around and, I was just like, loved it. I fell in love with it right then and there. And I was going away to university in Vancouver, and I was playing football at UBC.
I was going to ask you that because you're a big dude. I'm sure like it was hockey or football.
Well, I played college basketball as well.
Oh, wow.
And football. But I blew my knee out playing football. And my sister was living in Los Angeles at the time. And actually, she lives there now, but they moved to San Francisco at one point. Anyway, went down to visit her with the idea of looking into stunt work.
Oh, wow.
Turns out her next door neighbor was the props guy on an old TV series called Fall Guy, which was all about a stuntman.
Oh, yeah.
And so he kind of hooked me up with some phone numbers and said, call these stunt guys. I know them. And I wish I could remember the names now. Anyway, I called them, and they gave me the phone number of some guys that were getting into stunt work and had done some stunt work in Vancouver. And I came back and called, and I think it was like 3 or 4 weeks later, maybe, I was working on my first movie doing stunts in Alberta for Superman 3.
Well, yeah, I saw that on there. I was wondering if that was your first credits. So when you're like, you talked about like reading, walking onto that set in Vancouver, like, was there something that you prepped in your head about stunts? Did you like try to do something on your own to be like, I can take a fall like this?
Well, I mean, I played, when I played rough when I was a kid.
That's true.
I played a lot of sports. I thought, oh, I can take the knocks. I
Yeah.
played college football, it just the idea. I loved the old TV series Wild Wild West
Yeah.
when I was a kid, and I used to watch it, when it was first out. And Robert Conrad, and I loved the fight scenes that he did, and you could tell that it was him doing a lot of the fighting, if not most of the fighting. And I just thought, man, this guy moves so good, and it was so cool. And I'd play fight with my friends, and we'd stage fight and play superheroes and all that kind of stuff. But when I read that article about Hal Needham, and I realized actually over the years that a lot of people that got into stunt work, something they walked on a film set when they were a kid, and it just they fell in love with it. And around that age, 10 to 12 to 13, something clicked in them, and they tucked that idea of being a stuntman away in the back of their head, and they became stunt people.
Yeah, I think people have that brush with the industry. Like a lot of people I've talked to, because you have to like want to do it because it is a grueling industry. Like every side of it, there's the politics of it and everything. But the more positive part, you're talking about like playing superheroes and with your buddies growing up and play fights. So Superman 3, a canon film, was your first one.
Yeah, I think it was Paul Weston. I think was the British stunt coordinator on it, and which was funny enough. I ran into him about 2 years ago, and it was very cool to see him and thanked him for a great start and stuff. And it was just there wasn't a lot of industry in Vancouver at the time. There was more in Alberta, and they needed some indie stunt guys, and I knew Jacob Rupp, who was one of the first stunt guys in Vancouver. And he was the first stunt guy I met. And he goes, "Hey, I'm going up to work on Superman 3. They need more guys. You want me to put your name in there?" And he did. And we ended up going out and working on that together, and met some other Canadian stunt guys through that. And, was blown away by the paychecks, and it was good money for a kid. I was still in university at the time.
Oh, you still were? Wow. Okay.
Oh yeah, no, I started working in the film business while I was still in university.
Wow.
I was going away to work on movies and coming back and having to catch up on my my classes and my reports and all that kind of stuff. But I just it's something that grabs people. I think you grow up watching TV and you don't realize it's a real world. I mean, there's people that put this stuff together, and then that thing happens where you read that article or you walk on that film set and you go, I could be a part of this.
Yeah.
And you've grown up loving it. And that's certainly what happened to me. I know that's the same for a lot of other stunt people. And
just what goes into it. I don't think people realize that until they maybe listen to an interview with someone like really anybody. And they go, well, this shot took so-and-so days, like 4 days to shoot. And the one that I think about all the time whenever I talk to anybody about how in-depth shots are is one that you worked on, was X-Men X2. I interviewed the actor who played the president. His name slipped my mind right now. Yeah. But he was telling me how many days that took, that he was like under that desk and Nightcrawler was doing all those stunts. Were you the stunt coordinator on that one?
No, I wasn't the stunt coordinator. I was just one of the stunt guys in the Oval Office scene, and you can see the gun up. And there was a lot of other stunt guys in that sequence. But what was tough about that sequence was, they have to shoot everything and imagine while you're shooting the visual effects that you're putting into it. So the bad guy's doing this, and then setting up the next guy, he's got to be here, and it's like a chess game to figure all that out. And so it takes a long time, and back then it was a little bit harder because the process was a little longer and stuff. But you mentioned Ace Ventura, Pet Detective 2. which was one of the movies I worked on. And in the opening sequence, I play the helicopter pilot. I mean, that's, I don't know how many couple of minutes on film kind of thing, but I was there for over a week,
Wow.
shooting that sequence. And I remember we were doing this big long shot where we had two helicopters. I'm in one, and they got the camera helicopter following us in on this big opening wide shot. Opens the movie, and you come up to Ace Ventura on the side of the mountain, and that was a stunt guy, his stunt double, and I can't remember his name right now either, but. I mean, he was up on the side of that, hanging off the side of this mountain, way the fuck up there, and getting bit by black flies and stuff like that for hours. And we're doing this big long sequence, and of course, we got dialogue, and the way they did with that was he wasn't there, our lead actor wasn't there. They were shooting down in Carolina or something with him, Jim Carrey, and morphed his face. They put his face on this when the stunt guy turns. They put Jim Carrey's face on him, then they cut to the helicopter, and then they cut to Jim Carrey on the side of a set piece down in Carolina. But the stunt guy was up there for hours, on this tiny little ledge. And, I think he finally got just pissed off enough. He goes, "This is the last take." And I felt so sorry for him. I mean, it was beautiful probably for the first 5 minutes being up on the side of that mountain and everything. When the black flies start biting you, you got no place to go. Poor guy.
I was looking at your acting credits because you have a ton of acting. And now that you brought that one up, it's that one and ones that me and my friends always quote it. Like that whole scene when he's like, "If I were you and you were me, I would use your body to get to the top," like that. And in Hot Rod, the scene in Hot Rod when you're the trailer guy and Danny McBride, takes you to town.
Yeah. And you know what? I had no idea who Danny McBride was at that point.
Not a lot of people did. That was only his second or third movie and not even a big, major studio movie yet.
Yes. So now I'm honored that he kicked me in the nuts. And, and it's funny, you do a movie, you don't know how big it's going to be. That I was in for one day on that movie. And but a lot of people, saw it and loved it and mentioned it to me, and so it was pretty cool.
It is funny the things you get mentioned for. I'm sure a lot of actors, a lot of people that work in Hollywood, they do a movie and they're like, "This is what I'm going to be known for," and then it's the movie that maybe they did a day on, or a movie that they didn't really like, but it's what the public is going to remember you for the most part,
Sure. Yeah. I mean, look at Road Warrior, right? The original Road Warrior. I mean, it was a cheap little, Australian movie, and look who became famous from it.
I know.
It was pretty, yeah.
So then, from Superman 3, you're still in university. What was that next step? Was it being on that set and connecting with all the other Canadian stuntmen? And then going from there?
Yeah, I was actually fortunate because being still in university, I had access to the gyms and the equipment, and nobody had a video camera back then. I mean, so I set up, training sessions for myself and the other stunt guys, and we would come into the gymnastics gym and practice on the trampoline, get air sense, there were mats there to practice taking gunshots and doing fight scenes, learning how to do hip tosses and all that kind of stuff, and a video camera so you could come and look at your work. Yeah. And so I had something to add to the pot, and those were fun times because there were only a couple of guys that have been around, and done stunts on movies. And so I learned from them, and fortunately got to work with a lot of American stuntmen when they would come to Canada to film, and kind of apprenticed underneath them. And those were fun early years.
Well, that changed pretty quick, right? 83. That was in Canada, but then the boom happened pretty soon after that, right? That people were like, "Hey, we could shoot in Canada and save some money," and then that was probably big for.
Yeah, Jump Street came along, and Stephen Canal brought up, Hat Squad, Wise Guy. All of a sudden, all those shows.
Wise Guy,
And all of a sudden I was working all the time. And it timed out with me getting out of university, and I walked into this great career where there weren't a lot of stunt guys in town. So if they wanted a big bad guy, I got to play the big bad guy. And the community grew fairly quickly, and after that, but it took a while because you couldn't just put anybody on set and and make you look bad. If you were going to recommend somebody, you had to know that they could do what you wanted them to do. And a lot of things were specialties, came along. Asian martial arts was, becoming big then for the TV series and stuff like that. So, some great Asian stunt guys came along here in Vancouver. Dean Cho was one of the first. And so it was fun to kind of grow with the industry. And because a lot of other people came along too, you got to work with the new props guy that got in the business, and you grew up with these people, right?
Yeah, that's cool. That sense of community. What were you going to school for?
I was majoring in phys ed with a minor in English.
Oh.
I think if I hadn't got into stunt work, I probably would have been a cop or a fireman. I don't think I would have been a teacher.
And then, so like you mentioned, like there was that huge boom. There's like a ton of like shows and movies that you're stunting in at that point. And then was it the first time you were a stunt coordinator? It looks like a CBS summer. No, Sirens. It looked like that was like one of the early times you were in charge of the stunts. Yeah,
that was one of them. It wasn't my first. It was one of the first, though. Yeah. It was a pilot for a TV series that Cannell was doing, and it never went. Sirens, yeah.
But that's cool, and it's funny, like seeing this. That's such an important job being a stunt coordinator because you're the one that's in charge of everybody. But it's so cool. At such a young age, at the age of like 21, 22, you were the one organizing, like doing the workouts in the gym and having the equipment. So that like. You're like meant to do that.
I was gung ho, man. I wanted this to be a career, and I knew that that the stunt community was going to grow, that the film industry was going to grow. I mean, back then I think the dollar was at 75 cents, US, and I just thought to myself, how can they afford not to come here if they're going to save 25% on their budgets? And the industry runs on money, right? The time is money. And anyway, the industry grew just the way I thought it would, and I got in right at the basement and grew with it. And it was, like I say, those were fun times. We were all kind of, the props guy, the effects guys. I mean, we had a really great effects guy in Vancouver, John Thomas, who had started out as a stuntman but got into special effects, and John had a real affinity with the stunt community, and since passed away. But there's a special effects studio named after him here in Vancouver.
That's cool.
These were people that kind of helped you along, and I remember doing a car chase that I almost got killed on, and I came back to work, and I fractured my elbow and stuff like that, and he knew I was getting on the horse again, and so he was there. He goes, anything I can do for you? I go, well, I'm a little afraid of my bumper overlapping on the other car. And he brought in a guy and he welded a new section on section of bumper there. I mean, he was just such a fantastic guy, and it was like that through the whole community. We were all helping each other. It was a great time. There was a great sense of camaraderie.
That's great, man.
Yeah.
So like around that time, you had all these series and movies you're doing. Like cool movies like Who's Harry Crumb, Speed Zone, and then just one of my favorite movies, like being a Jersey guy, Friday the 13th. Even though they only filmed the one here, and then the rest of them were all over. Yeah. And then probably the same thing. They noticed how much they can save on the dollar, and so they made Vancouver look like the coast of New Jersey. And then, so how did that happen? How did you land the gig for Jason Takes Manhattan?
I had worked with Randy Cheveldave, who was the production manager on the show, and he actually called me up and he said the first message on my machine from him was, because we had machines back then, was, hey, Ken, do you want to be the stunt coordinator on this Friday the 13th movie and play Jason? And I by the time I got back to him, I was working on something else at the time. I got another message from him saying, "Oh, listen, the guy that played him before has made a deal, and so we just need you as the stunt coordinator." And so I came on as the stunt coordinator and the stunt double and the fry cook, and worked on that project.
I love the fry cook. I think that's the coolest thing. Like when we covered it,
Yeah,
I was like, I've seen the movie a million times because it was just one of those ones that was always on USA, and man, and I remember seeing that fact that it was like the fry cook went on to play, Jason in Freddy vs. Jason. I think the coolest thing is I don't even know if you were aware of it at the time that Rob Hedden, like the writer, because this is something way before production started, that he wanted that movie to be Freddy vs. Jason.
Oh, I had no idea about that. No.
Yeah, I don't know if were you in the documentary at all? Did they reach out to you to do like the behind the scenes, I don't know. It was like a while ago they did it, but in it, he talks about that. But New Line, Freddy, they wanted so much money because their fourth movie the year before did so well, The Dream Master. So they wanted like more of a cut, like boxing. You have two heavyweights, like Freddy and Jason. So they just like nixed the idea. But man, that's such a cool movie.
No, I had no idea. That seems really early for that idea, but I mean, it only makes sense, right? Because you look at the past, Frankenstein, Dracula, the werewolf.
Yeah.
They ended up putting all those characters together. So it was kind of inevitable that eventually they would do it with some of the other horror, iconic horror monsters.
Yeah, and then Rob wanted the script. Again, this is probably nixed on a script before you even got it, but he wanted to have like it be so in New York, like the kills. Like he wanted like one of the girls to die at like Madison Square Garden, somebody else die in front of like the Statue of Liberty. Then obviously for budgetary purposes, they only had like those few minutes in Times Square. Right. But so I interviewed a couple people that were the victims in that. One was Tiffany Paulson, who is Susie Donaldson, who gets killed on the boat.
Right.
In that scene. And she told me that her original death was supposed to be like some intricate, like underwater, like he shoots her underwater, but something happened.
I don't know. I mean, what you see on the screen was the script that I got.
Yeah, I'm sure.
So she may have had access to earlier scripts that they had to rewrite for budgetary reasons. We had a lot of water sequences in that, and some good kills. There were some good kills in there.
Do you have any favorite that you were able to like put your like flavor on?
Well, my favorite kills in Freddy vs. Jason, the bed folding. Because it's so not expected.
Yeah.
You expect Jason to, spear the guy with the machete, but to fold the bed up, I just thought was brilliant. I gotta say, Ronnie Yu was such a great choice for director for Freddy vs. Jason because he has a martial arts background, and a lot of people said, "Well, how's Freddy going to fight Jason? Jason's just so much bigger." And anybody who's done martial arts knows that size isn't it doesn't determine who wins the fight. Yeah. And Ronnie just put a great touch on that. And I think if he hadn't been a director from Hong Kong, Freddy vs. Jason would have been so much different. But he put a really great spin on it.
Yeah, the movie has great colors, and I think it does the right thing. It like gives the audience what they love about each. Throughout the movie, it's like they didn't have to reinvent everything. Just go to the well of everything that everybody loves of both. And it was a clever story that like Freddy needed to use yourself, Jason, in order to put the fear in everyone. So that was pretty neat.
I think it was the 10th, or so script that they had considered. And so they put a lot of thought into it. And the thing about Freddy vs. Jason is you didn't have to see all the other movies of both franchises to enjoy the movie.
Yeah.
And a lot of people that I've spoken to, hadn't seen all the movies from all the franchises. And, Freddy vs. Jason turned them on to both franchises. It's like, oh, this is cool. Now I'm going to watch the Elm Streets. Now I'm going to watch the Friday the 13th. So they just did a great job of putting a script together and it had the tidbits for the people that had seen all the franchises and stuff like that. So.
No, you're right. No, that's so true. And one thing I love about that, we'll go back to like other things just about your career, but one thing I think is still the funniest thing about it wasn't even the movie, was the weigh-in. The Vegas style weigh-in is like the funniest thing.
Wasn't that a great marketing idea?
I love it.
It was just a really great idea. We had a full auditorium for that. And, I didn't really know when I got the job how big a deal it was. And it was even bigger because it was both franchises.
Yeah.
So when we did the Vegas thing, it was just like blew me away a bit. And I really Robert ate it up. I mean, he put him on stage and makeup, and he just let him go. So I didn't have that much to do except do my Jason walk.
Yeah.
But it was just a great idea to get the guy. Let's get ready to rumble.
Yeah.
Just set it up perfectly and everything. So that was just a great marketing idea.
Oh, so great. Robert's great, and just. He loves it. Like, he embodied that character. Other people shy away from a character that they played, and like that's who they are sometimes. So how did that role come about? Was it like an open audition, or somebody said, "Hey, Ken, remember 15 years ago when that I asked you to be him?"
No, it was I was actually being interviewed for the stunt coordinating job.
Oh, wow.
So I go in to meet with the producer, the line producer, Doug. Blanking on the name, but so I'm sitting down across from him, and he's looking at me, and I can tell his mind's kind of someplace else, and then finally he just says, would you be interested in playing Jason?
Wow.
And I said, yeah, sure. And he goes, well, you'd have to audition, but you're the right height and right build, what we've been looking for, and they've been auditioning a lot of different people for it. But, would you audition for it? And I said, yeah, sure. So they set me up for the audition, and the audition was wearing a really cheap Jason mask. And they read the opening scene of the girl swimming in the lake, and they did a close-up of my eyes reacting to her in the lake and the dialogue and all that kind of stuff. And then they had me walk around the room. And they sent that to Ronnie Yu. And then I went in, got a call back to go meet with Ronnie, and Ronnie, basically okayed me in the room.
Wow.
And, part of it was, I had worn the Jason costume before in Freddy, in number 8, and had experience with the franchise. They knew that they wanted to cast a stunt guy, even though they made it very clear to me from the get-go that I would have a stunt double.
Really?
Well, it was just such a big budget movie.
Oh, yeah, insurance purpose, yeah.
For insurance, and also they run a main and a second unit, and they always tend to shoot the action on second unit.
Oh, yeah.
And then pick up shots on main unit with the main actors and stuff like that. And because I specifically asked, I said, there's one stunt I really want to do, because I knew it would get nominated for a World Stuntman's Award, and it was the fire gag in the cornfield. So I specifically asked to do that, and he said, "No, Ken, we're hiring you as an actor on this movie, and that's going to be shot on second unit. We'll have you on main unit." And so the last night of filming, though, I did the fight stuff, at the camp and whatnot. So it's not like I didn't do any stunt work on the thing. So the last night of filming, Glenn Ennis, who was doubling me, had the costume on that was right for the hand coming out of the grave, I think, and I had the right costume on for when Jason gets thrown out of the van that's flipping down the road. So they came to me and they go, last night of filming, Ken, you're in the right. Do you mind doing the ratchet out of the back of the van? And I said, oh, now I'm expendable. So I ended up doing that. But it was just sorry. This is Max.
Hey, Max. But man, that's so wild. I think the connection of it, the 15 years late, 13, 14 years later. So was it the same thing when Kane was in the costume? Did they let him do any of that? Or were you a body double like Glenn was for you?
Yes. That's to say, they didn't have as much second unit to shoot on number 8, but they had second unit to shoot. So I did the second unit stuff. And so like the car hit, the the getting electrocuted.
Climbing into the boat?
Uh,
Is that you?
no, I don't think I did that one. I did the getting electrocuted on the, walking down off the train, getting electrocuted on the tracks. Oh, when his face melts, that's a prosthetic face, and those were my hands and stuff.
Oh.
One or two other things, yeah.
Want to shop Walmart Black Friday deals first? Walmart Plus members get early access to our hottest deals. Join now and get 50% off a 1-year annual membership. Shop Black Friday deals first with Walmart Plus. See terms at walmartplus.com.
I always loved the Julius kill. That's like, even though the head and the way it flies off and everything, I think that is so cool. Like, because that's like the only time in the series really that you see him be like damaged by like a human. Like just the way Julius is giving him shots to the gut.
Yeah. That was a great scene. I had a friend of mine, Ernie Jackson, doubling him, and did some of it. The actor did most of his own punches, and the idea of the head coming right off. I mean, it's so over the top kind of thing, right? It's like if you hit somebody that hard, you might take their jaw off, but the head's going to stay on. But the head coming off, suspend all reality when it comes to slasher films.
Oh yeah. And then from there, so while you're doing the stunt work, like we'll go back to like 90-ish, like that part of it. So you're doing the stunt and the acting. Was it just mostly up in Vancouver, or were you already like did you ever come down to LA for a while?
No, there was no reason to go to LA for me.
Wow.
I was actually bouncing between Toronto and Vancouver. So early in my career, I would, I'd spend a week or two in Toronto working on a film or a TV series or something like that. Then I'd fly back to Vancouver, get a day in, get another phone call. Hey, can you come back out to Toronto?
Wow.
I was going back and forth between Vancouver and Toronto a lot. And then Vancouver just got so steady and busy, and they ended up, they found another big guy in Toronto that they could use, and so I ended up, spending most of my time in Vancouver. I did go down to Arizona to do a Western sequence for a movie called Stay Tuned.
I
was doubling an actor doing his fast draw, and so I did gun spinning and fast draw. And
wait, were you John Ritter or were you Jeffrey Jones?
Jeffrey Jones. I doubled Jeffrey Jones for his fast draw.
Nice.
And I was doubling him when they were shooting in Vancouver. So I had been doubling him in Vancouver, and the American stunt coordinator, I think it was Gary Combs. I let him know I do Western fast draw and gun spinning, and he goes, well, send me a tape. So I did a tape of me spinning guns and stuff like that. He goes, you're hired. So we go down there, and we're shooting in old Tucson, this old Western town, and they have the live shows there and everything, right? So they got cowboys there that do Western, fast draw and gun spinning, and they do the live show, the gunfights and stuff. And they found out that I was there to do Jeffrey Jones's fast draw. There was a spin, spin out of the holster, shoot, spin back into the holster, and I had these guys all lined up watching me, to see how I did, kind of thing. And luckily, the first time I did it, I did it so fast the camera missed it, and he just sort of looked up at the director and he goes,
wow.
Can you slow it down a bit? And but anyway, I was lucky I pulled that out. Yeah, actually, I got to do James Arness's fast draw in the first TV movie called Gunsmoke: Return to Dodge.
Wow.
Now, a lot of people might not remember Gunsmoke, the old TV series. It was one of the longest TV series in the world, but I grew up watching that. And there's a scene at the end where he has the gunfight with the bad guy, and I got to do James Arness's fast draw for that. So
that's real.
One of the little, great things tucked away in my memory train.
How did you get to start doing that? Was it something you did as a kid, like guns, or was you like, oh, this is something I should learn?
It's a funny thing. I'm Canadian. A lot of people don't think of Canadians and guns, but when I was a kid, I would go to the Sears catalog, and I was always every Christmas I wanted a new toy gun.
Yeah.
And so I grew up sort of enamored of Westerns and guns and stuff like that. And I think it was after like my first knee injury and I was laid up, I bought a replica handgun and a holster, and because I couldn't walk around too much, and I started spinning a gun, and I just practiced and learned from watching Clint Eastwood, when he's handing the guy the gun, he spins it around and shoots him, and Outlaw Josie Wales, and watching Sammy Davis Jr. and Kirk Douglas. They both had great scenes where they spun guns and stuff, and I just thought, oh, this might be handy one day, and I was always enamored of it, so I learned.
And it paid off.
Yeah.
So when it comes to this, like more of a general question about being a stunt coordinator, like when you're planning a stunt, what is that process? Are you going in and doing it, or like how does that work?
Well, it starts up. You read the script and you break the script down, all the stunts that are involved in that script, and then you have a meeting with the director at some point to discuss, his vision of that stunt, and and then you break it down from there. You talk to him about how he sees it, and you set it up accordingly, right down to how many stunt guys you're going to use, the equipment you're going to use, planning the rehearsal days, so that once the set's built, you got to make sure you have enough time to get on there and set up the ratchet so that you can haul the guy across the room into the furniture. And so you got to know where the furniture is going to be, and the director tells you where he's going to be putting the cameras, and so it you break it down into its pieces. It can all be a little overwhelming, but once you break it into its pieces, then you set it up, budget it, rehearsal equipment, stunt people, and you just do it a step at a time.
Wow. Yeah, because obviously things can always go wrong with things. So I always wondered how involved, because you hear some of these horror stories about what have happened on sets. So now that's cool that it's really a long process, sitting with the director, figuring everything out.
Well, when you're doing films, you have more time. Feature films, you tend to get more time and stuff. When I was doing the X-Files, a TV series, I mean, these days on some TV series, you've got two stunt coordinators. You've got one doing one episode, and then you've got another doing the next episode to give them time to set up and everything. And they have more money to do it. But, stunt coordinators will have assistants or something like that. When I was doing X-Files, I was doing it all by myself. And so, while we're shooting one episode, I'm prepping for the next and, running around trying to get all that done. And there's a lot of responsibility for the safety of not just the stunt people, but the crew members as well. Should something go wrong, you want to make sure the camera's not, and the people behind the camera aren't in a dangerous place. And so there was a lot to do. That it could get quite busy.
I think it just comes with the territory, broken bones. You said you hurt your knee. How many bones have you broken over your career?
Well, I mean, I have to start at my toes and work my way up to remember them all, and some are doubled up. So, the injury rate in stunt work is 100%. Just like if you play pro football, you're going to get hurt. If you play a pro sport, the odds are eventually you're going to get hurt. And you just hope that as a stunt performer, it's not a career-ending one or something really devastating. And unfortunately, there have been fatalities and some serious injuries, career-ending injuries where that people have survived. But broken bones certainly happen, and sprains and bruises are just part of the day's work at the office. And you can take some pretty hard thumps doing stunt work. And these days, I'm amazed when you look at these big budget, X-Men movies or the Marvel comics. They've got a stunt guy getting ratcheted, and taking a hard hit in the background that nobody even notices, and you've got maybe 8 or 10 guys doing that. And ratchets are so prominent today. There wasn't as many of them, when I was a young stunt guy coming up. but those take their toll. I mean, you're hauling people into solid pieces of set piece, on the side of a car, and those are all hard hits those people are taking, and they don't get the recognition for it that they should. I mean, there still isn't an Academy Award for stunt performance.
I know, it's just so ridiculous when you have all these scenes in movies that you watch and you're like, oh my God, that looks so real. Like when you're watching a movie and you say that looks so real, like there should be a category for that.
Yeah, they have the World Stuntman's Awards, which is great. Taurus by, I think, Red Bull still sponsored them. And it's great that they've got that. I went to the very first one, and, it was very cool that they finally were recognizing stunt performers and stuff. And
yeah.
Let me say, I was hoping to get, if I could have done the burns for Freddy versus Jason, the burns that were done in that movie by Glenn, should have won the World Stuntman's Awards that year. What did one was Last Samurai, and there's a big sequence where a bunch of guys are on fire in Last Samurai. But what really happened was they had small burns on the stunt guys, and then they CG'd a lot of the fire. So as far as danger and skill and all that stuff goes, I think Glenn did 8 burns for the sequence in the cornfield, and it should have won. So it's all politics.
Have you done that before? Fire, or is that with that?
Yeah.
Oh, you have. Okay.
Oh, sure. I mean, that's part of it. When I grew up in the business, you wanted to be able to do as much as possible. Every kind of stunt because you work more. Yeah. And stunt guys back then were when I brought my stunt bag to work, I had stuff in there to do fire gags. I had stuff in there to do car hits. I had stuff in there to do, a variety, car driving. That was my bag. I thought there were times when you came to set and they said, oh, we'll have you do this stunt too, or we're shooting on this lot. And because I remember working on 2, and I think I worked on 3 shows in one day, where I was running from set to set to set, working, doing a different stunt. And sometimes I wouldn't know what I was doing until I got there. It was just so busy.
Wow.
But that was the fun of it too, right? I remember.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. My stunt bag was huge. I mean, you could, basically the size of a person. And I would sit that in the bucket seat of my Corvette and drive to work on a sunny day with the top down, thinking I was the luckiest, guy in the world, going and working on a movie.
Yeah, it just shows like how young the industry was up there, that there probably just wasn't, obviously you were great at what you did, you're a big dude, but also it was probably like, man, we need there's not a ton of people like Ken, that can do this. So 3 in one day, man, that's crazy.
Yeah. Yeah, no, those are, like I say, those are great times.
Yeah.
The industry was young and everybody in it was young, and we all the camaraderie was really good because we all wanted the industry to succeed, in BC, and so it was important to us that we put out a good product and that the producers got their money's worth, and so it was, like I say, it was great times to be part of the industry here,
and it's thriving still. Hallmark, that's their capital, and other movies are shot up there, but I know Hallmark, that's all their movies are in Vancouver. I know some actors that I've interviewed that like moved to Vancouver just to be in that scene.
Well, what's funny is if you're from Vancouver as an actor, you pretty much have to move down to LA to get cast in one of the lead roles to come back to Vancouver and work. Ryan Reynolds did that. So many of them do, and so it's just a part of the business. They cast many of the shows that come here out of LA first, and then look to Vancouver.
So Ken, how did the acting come about? Was it just something you wanted to do, or you showed up one day, they're like, hey, can you read this line?
Yeah, no, I remember, I think it was the first acting job first line I had. So I was playing a big thug, and I came to set, and they hey, you got some sides. We put your sides in your room. And sides, oh yeah, no, you got some lines here. And it was like, something small, like Sure Boss or something like that. And I remember how nervous I was having lines. As a stunt guy, you're used to doing that. You're very relaxed about it and everything. But you've got your shot now. It's like, okay, we shot him, shot. Okay, now we're shooting you for your lines, kind of thing. And I remember how nervous I was for that. But that kept happening. I kept getting small roles and stuff like that. And actually, I played, besides doing James Arness's Fast Draw in Gunsmoke: Return to Dodge, I played one of the bad guys called Pot, and worked with an old stunt guy named Tony Epper out of LA, who belongs to this huge family of stunt people that's very famous down there. And he was a big guy, and fortunately, he kind of looked at me as, here's a young up and comer. I think I reminded him a bit of his son, Daniel. And he and I got along great. And he was a really good actor. And so he gave me some tips, when I was working on that. I enjoyed it. It was another challenge. And as you get older and your body gets more banged up, you don't mind doing more lines and more hitting the ground.
Yeah. And you did a lot, so it took off. Obviously, you were learning. Did you ever take any acting classes along the way?
Oh yeah.
Oh,
And
cool.
Fortunately, I had a chance to work with a lot of actors, who became friends and sort of gave you tips as you went along, kind of thing. And you learn by watching, and you just it's really a matter of getting relaxed with it. The same thing with stunt work. You've got a big fight to do, a big fight scene to do, and you've memorized all these moves and everything. If you're nervous, all of a sudden you start forgetting stuff. And so I see that in young stunt people, fantastic martial artists or whatever, but you put a camera on them, put them on set, and they've got this big long fight scene to do. And the nerves get to them, kind of thing. And so much of being a good actor is just being relaxed and allowing yourself to fall into that character. And I remember I got to work with James Garner early in my career, and I was actually working as a stand-in on a movie, because I did extra work and stand-in work, in the beginning, help make ends meet and stuff. And I was working with James Garner, standing in for John Lithgow. And I remember seeing James Garner. He was laughing and joking. Their roll cameras, and they called action, and boom, he was his character. It was like he flicked the switch, and he played this great character. And he was just so relaxed, and obviously been doing it for so long. And that's just an example of what a great actor can do.
Yeah, no, that's so cool.
I'm not saying I'm a great actor by any stretch. You never stop learning, but when I've had a chance to see some really great actors work, and it's really something to see.
Yeah, no, that's so cool. It's because there's so many methods for acting. One is the James Gardner joking around action change, and there's the people like Jim Carrey and when he did Man on the Moon, and he was in character 24/7 when he was playing Tony Clifton in that movie, which is insane.
He's one of my favorite actors. I mean, I just, he's so talented. And, I love watching his movies, because who could do what he does?
Yeah.
I mean, before him or since him, he's just really amazing to watch.
Yeah, and I think it's crazy, when you were working on Ace Ventura 2, 2 years before that, 2 years probably to when you were filming that, people were like, oh, that's that white guy from In Living Color. But that 1 year, man, he had Dumb and Dumber, Ace Ventura, The Mask, Batman Forever, and then Ace Ventura 2. I interviewed a few people that were in the tribe from that movie, the chief and his translator, and they had really great stories. Talk about this guy that so much was his life changed overnight, really, within 2 years. So
I just remember I had a flashback. So you remember the rhinoceros scene?
Yeah,
where Jim Carrey comes out of the. So I'm going to the special effects shop. Mike Mazzina he's a stunt guy, but he also does special effects, and he was sort of John Thomas was his sort of mentor coming up and everything. And so I remember going to the shop when they were building that rhinoceros and seeing it and everything. Just thinking, I'd read the scene and stuff, and I could just see how this is going to go. And anyway, that's pretty famous. Pretty famous.
Just the way the little tiny fan goes out and he keeps tapping it, and then it just finally dies, and just how long he took to get out of that. So great. So Ken, do you have any favorite acting roles that you did over the years? Is there one that like stood out for you personally?
Doing the Western, because I love Westerns. Doing the Gunsmoke Western was really special because I'd grown up watching James Arness and getting to meet Tony Epper, being on location, getting to play cowboy. Like I say, when I was a kid, I always wanted, six guns and stuff like that for Christmas. I remember I had this one Winchester rifle that shot little plastic bullets, and I was like picking off the three wise men and stuff like that. But I mean, so I'd grown up playing these games and stuff like that, and to be there, to be on a horse, to have a gun strapped to my hip all day and playing cowboy, that was really memorable for me, I think. And because Tony Epper had done a lot of great Westerns, and I could sit there and listen to him all night, tell stories and stuff like that. So that was, and young in my career too. So, you're impressionable, and it was just a great experience all around. And, I remember they hardly do this anymore, but at the end of the movie, the producers send out a letter and thank you for, the work you did and stuff. And they mentioned my fast draw, so I was pretty happy about that. And so that one sticks out for sure.
Yeah. Did you ever keep anything from set, like scripts or things from like stunt scenes or anything?
I actually stole a 45 dummy bullet from Gunsmoke, and I've probably pilfered a few little souvenirs over the years. I do have like a memory trunk.
Nice.
And over the years, especially early in my career, because it was all so new and fun.
Oh yeah.
I just, it was such hard work. Long hours, but when you're young, you don't notice it as much, and you've got so much energy, and you're doing this thing you love, and so that it just doesn't seem like work, even though you're doing 16-hour days for 6 days a week, living on 4 hours sleep, and we did 13th Warrior. I remember I was one of the stunt coordinators on that, and it was a huge budget movie. Big sequences, and I remember telling the stunt guys, this will be one you'll be glad you did when you did once it's done, because it was hard work, but that was a great experience too.
So what would you say, how has the industry changed, like from you say late 80s, like when you're already in the groove, like working on like bigger budget projects, like, and then towards like the 2000s, like what was like the difference? Was it like CGI and not relying too much on the stunt end of it?
No, I mean, there's more stunt people than ever right now, but definitely CGI started to change the industry, came along and really changed the way things were done and made it better. I mean, there's just things you can't do to the human body.
Yeah.
Ryan Reynolds getting hit by two cars in Free Guy, which they stole from an earlier movie that Brad Pitt did. Anyway, there's just, you can't do that with a human being and make it look as good. So thankfully they, because you got all these, superhero movies now that people have to do. I can't imagine how many stunt people you would go through making a movie, how many broken stunt guys there would be if it wasn't for CGI. And there's still enough stunt work out there, to keep stunt people busy. And another big change is that stunt people tend to specialize more now. So you've got, people that are specialized in fight scenes or gymnastics and fight scenes. And then you've got some people that specialize in doing fire gags or stunt driving. And which makes sense, right? I mean, if you're going to get better, you focus on one thing and you become really, really, really good at it. And whereas, back in my day, it was you did it, tried to do as much as you could of everything so that you worked more. But that's not the way to make, the best fire gag or
You're
the
right,
best, or when you specialize at something, you become really, really good at it.
Is there like a stunt school, or have you mentored any stunt people like over the years, or?
There's been stunt schools in Vancouver off and on over the years. They usually don't last long because they're usually put on by people who can't make it as stunt people. So they open a stunt school. And there's been some stunt schools in LA that Kahana's was a famous one, I think. And, there's been stunt driving schools. There's one that's run out of Vancouver now, which is great because the way I learned to stunt drive. This is my first stunt driving lesson, and I don't know if any of this can come back. I mean, I think the statute of limitations is up long ago. But so I'm working on I'm doing a movie with James Garner, and Louis Delgado is James Garner's oldest friend. They went to high school together, and Louis was James Garner's stand-in. And I was standing in for John Lithgow, and there was a possibility of me getting to double John Lithgow doing a stunt. Anyway, I wanted to learn. I was talking to Louis about being a stuntman, and he goes, "Yeah, well, I got to learn to stunt drive when James Garner learned to stunt drive." They hung out together and stuff like that. So the famous Garner, reverse 180 that he did a lot of the movies, Louis learned that too. And when James Garner learned to drive race cars for a big race car movie he did, Louis got to do that too. And Louis said, "Well, if you ever get a car in a place, let me know, and I'll show you. I'll show you a few tricks." So me being the young, stupid guy that I was, who wouldn't let anything stand in the way of me becoming a stuntman, thought, this is great. Okay. So we're shooting in Victoria, where I grew up. Small town. I go out to the airport, and I go to the airport manager, and I go, "Hey, I'm the stunt coordinator on this movie we're shooting, and I want to rehearse the stunt. Could we use the end of one of your runways?" And he says, "Yes." Didn't check my credentials, and didn't ask any other questions. Yeah, sure. I mean, people knew that there was a movie being shot. I mean, I just can't imagine the hell that would have broken loose. So then I go to Budget Rent. I can't remember if it was Budget or which rental car company it was. Budget sticks out in my mind, and I rent a car, and I call Louis up, and I go, "Sunday morning, we're going out stunt driving." And he goes, "You got a place?" I go, "Yep." He goes, "You got a car?" I go, "Yep." And I pick Louis up, and we go up to the airport, and he shows me some car slides with this car, and that was my first stunt driving lesson.
God.
I learned enough then that I eventually bought my own a police car off a Burt Reynolds movie called Malone, and
oh yeah.
So then I found locations in the city that were, behind an old warehouse or something like that, and I would go practice behind that warehouse until the police came, and then I would take off and the police would sometimes come right up to me, and and I'd say, "Oh, I'm a stunt guy. I'm just rehearsing," and they never arrested me for whatever reason. And I ended up getting my first stunt driving job on a TV series. What was it called? It was based on, there had been a feature film that had done really well, and they made it into a TV series. And
not Cobra, right?
No, it wasn't Cobra. Okay. Gene Wilder was in the original movie. But anyway, so my first stunt driving job is on Robson and Granville in Vancouver, which is one of the busiest downtown streets. And I'm in a cop car, and I've got pedestrians on the corners. They weren't backing people up and stuff like that. So if I spun out or lost it or something like that, I'm into all these people and whatnot. And luckily I was pretty confident about my driving by then. And so I slid the car 3 or 4 times around the corner. It all went great. And after that, I kind of developed a reputation in Vancouver as a good stunt driver, and ended up getting a lot of work as a stunt driver over the years.
Jesus. Is that is that like obviously, like you said, you have to be calm when you do a stunt. Is something like that the most nerve-wracking? Because obviously you're in control, but there's this vehicle that you're in that can cause damage.
Well, a tire can blow out. You check all that ahead of time. Make sure the tires look good and all that kind of stuff. But I would say, being new, my first car sliding job, and being put in that situation, I was focused. Put it that way. You focus on what you have to do and put the nerves aside, and go out and do. And if you've done it enough times, it sort of becomes muscle memory and part of that. So, like athletes go into the zone, a stunt person or an actor, or anybody that's done something enough times goes into the zone, and you programmed yourself to do this. And so it's like starting a game. You're nervous before the game, and then you do it a couple times, and now the nerves are gone, and you're just focused on what you're doing.
I still can't believe the guy at the airport. All you had to do is say something, and he was like, "All right."
Yeah, you know what? And I was just so naive and dumb. I mean, I could have ruined my whole career, because if that had gotten out, and this idiot went to the airport and told him he was the stunt coordinator. He was the stand-in on the movie. But I was just determined to make it as a stunt guy, and I think I'd seen Hooper. I'd seen Hooper one too many times.
You're like, I could do that.
Yeah.
Oh man, that's amazing. I always like to ask this question. Obviously, you went to school for phys ed and teacher, and you said, "Hey, I would have ended up being a cop or a fireman." Is that what you think you would have done if Obviously, you're determined to be a stuntman, but if that didn't work out, you think you would have been a cop or a fireman?
I think if there hadn't been a film industry here, that would have been a good likelihood, getting into being a cop or a fireman. I liked adventure and danger and so I think probably one of those two things.
Just the timing of everything worked. Obviously, your passion for wanting to get in this, and it's just everything blew up at the right age for you in Vancouver.
Yeah. It's the film industry is skill and then luck. I mean, how many awesome actors haven't been discovered because they didn't get the same breaks that Al Pacino did, or Ryan Reynolds, or you can't only just have the skill. You have to have the luck of meeting the right people, being in the right place at the right time. So there's a lot of luck involved.
And then you have to nail it. There's that luck of getting that one big job, but then you have to nail it, because there's so many actors that I'm sure, or any part of the film industry, they got that one break and they bombed or didn't do the right thing, and then they were never heard of again.
I've seen actors have to be replaced because when they got on set, they were too nervous. And they probably had a great audition, and then they came to set and they're face to face with some actor that they've been watching since they were a kid or whatever, and they're just too nervous, and they had to be replaced. Nerves are a big part of it. This is your moment, your chance to shine, kind of thing, and people either do or they don't. Yeah.
Ken, this has been great. I wanted to mention this little story because I think I think sometimes people don't think that other people have that same feeling, like you said, when you were a kid and playing with your buddies, and then years later you're doing that. So William Sadler I interviewed, and he was telling me about when he was a kid, him and his buddy would play World War II, fake shooting guns. And you got to think, he plays these badass villains early in his career, Hard to Kill and Die Hard 2, all within a year of each other. He said when he was doing Die Hard 2, when they're shooting up McLean in the plane, he said he had to get stopped by the production. I think it was the production manager or the director, and they came up and said, "You don't need to make the gun sounds."
You know what? I have a funny story about that too.
Yeah, go.
That stunt guy, they're rehearsing the shot where he comes into this room and they go, okay, you're going to fire, you're going to shoot the gun 3 times. So you run in and you go bang, bang, bang. And, so people can react and stuff like that. And so they roll cameras and he comes running into the room and he goes bang, bang, bang. And so it's not the first time that's happened.
That's great. Oh man, Ken, thanks for spending the time, and I'm happy we finally connected.
Can I plug a fan of mine?
Oh yeah.
Shayna Keebler is a diehard fan of mine, and she's written a book called Rusty Blade for the Love of a Fan, and it's out on Amazon now.
Sweet.
Anyway, I just wanted to plug that book if anybody wants to have a look at it. She's one of these people who I think was a little lost for a while, and then just found her calling and writing. And all I did was say, keep writing. And she's written that book. She's working on another book, and I'm just really proud of her and wanted to plug it. Right on. Well, really nice talking to you, Doug.
Oh, dude, this has been great. Thank you so much. So cool that Ken plugged a fan's book. I love that. And I love the story about the stand-in. The fact that James Garner uses a buddy that he went to high school with as a stand-in to give this guy so he always has a buddy around, but also gives the guy a job. And the fact that Ken pretended that he was a stunt coordinator in order to learn how to stunt drive and do a 180 on an airport, man, it's wild. It is insane. But he loved it. He was so hungry he would do anything for it. Great stories along the way. Ace Ventura. Man, he was so cool. That was so great. For episode 199, just before 200, talk to Jason Voorhees, and just to hear some behind the scenes from that, the weigh-in, which I love so much, with Robert Englund. I think that was the coolest promo for Freddy vs. Jason, having Michael Buffer there. Man, I hope you enjoyed it. Your homework, Freddy vs. Jason. The movie is absolutely amazing. It's free on Tubi, so find it there. And don't forget to review, rate, share our podcast. Follow us on all social media at Sequels Only. And don't forget to check out our website, sequelsonly.com. Good night.